So after World War II, as Western Europe is celebrating all the freedom and liberty they've now won, Libya, which is a former Italian colony, would be fully oppressed by the new Anglo-American alliance and would have a puppet government under a man named King Idris installed as the ruler. He would, of course, let all the Western corporations come into Libya and basically take control of Libya's natural resources, specifically gold and a very small oil reserve. And for the most part, the Anglo-American alliance is willing to basically just ignore whatever's going on in Libya, but that all changes, as it always does, when Libya's oil fields are discovered to be much, much bigger than the colonial overlords thus thought they were. This takes Libya out of the miscellaneous colony category into the strategic target category, which historically is always a precursor to unspeakable horrors being unleashed in the name of capitalism and freedom. Libya starts getting Western military bases everywhere, and the oppression from the puppet government is stepped up to ensure the people don't interfere with the mass extraction of their natural resources for Western profit. Anyway, in 1969, a young officer, 27-year-old Muammar Gaddafi, led a surprisingly bloodless coup against King Idris and took control of the Libyan government. One of the first things Gaddafi does is he turns around and kicks the Western military forces out of the country. And he's really smart about it too. He basically goes to them and says, look, you're going to leave and then, we can keep trading our oil with you. Or say we could just blow up all the oil fields and go ally with the Soviets. The timing of this is perfect because this is the height of the Cold War and the height of tension between the Soviets and the Americans. This is like the high water mark of the Vietnam War and not long after the Cuban Missile Crisis. So America decides, all right, you know what, we've got enough on our plate right now. We'll come back for you later. And of course they will. But from 1969 until 2011, Gaddafi will nationalize all of these natural resources, all of the oil, all of the gold, and he will use them to fund huge projects in Libya that will massively raise the standard of living for Libyans in the country. He introduces free healthcare and education. He basically creates a near universal literacy amongst the population and funds scholarships abroad. He subsidizes housing, food, fuel, basically all of life's essentials he subsidizes and keeps at a very low level, again by using the oil and gold money to maintain those low levels. He also offers interest-free loans to new families. So if you got married and have kids, he will give you an interest-free loan to get your life started together. He would create the Great Man-Made River Project, which is a massive irrigation project to basically send water to all the desert cities. It is a huge project. It is still around today. It is awesome. He makes sure that Libya has zero foreign debt. He rejects all of the predatory debt trap IMF loans and again uses all those subsidized resources to ensure that Libya has no debt and therefore owes no Western countries anything. Gaddafi was also a big proponent of women's rights. He was a big supporter of it, and he would inject so much money into education and employment for women that it would, at several times in their history, surpass Western nations in terms of the results. Gaddafi was, of course, also a Pan-Africanist, and it will be this point specifically that will be his downfall, because not only is he supporting all of the independence movements around Africa to get rid of neo-colonialism, especially in West Africa against the French, he also has the money to back it up. Like, Libya's got like $200 billion in gold reserves at this point, and he actually has the money to help fund and get results on these projects. And it is that direct threat to Western hegemony that will be his downfall. So in 2011, the Nato Defensive Alliance, which of course exists to stop the Soviet Union, which at this point hasn't existed for nearly 30 years but is somehow still around, led by Barack Obama, will launch a humanitarian mission in Libya by bombing the ever-loving shit out of it and funding crowds of gangs and militias to tear the country to pieces. Gaddafi would of course be captured, tortured and murdered, and Libya to this day has been transformed into a failed state. The West of course still describes this as, a great moment for democracy. They brought democracy to Libya, but they always seem to also leave out the fact that you remember that $200 billion gold reserve? Yeah, that completely vanished into the hands of Western corporations. They held onto it to protect it apparently, and no one's seen it since. Also these same corporations like Shell, for example, now de facto own all of the oil fields in Libya. Also, if you remember Gaddafi's national projects, including the Great Man-Made River, that's also now owned by Western private equity funds. So basically, all the good things in Libya are now owned by Western corporations, and the standard of living for the Libyan people has plummeted. But hey, I guess that's a small price to pay for freedom. Yeah. Anyway, the West still portrays Gaddafi as this tyrannical dictator who committed endless human rights abuses. But if recent events have taught us anything, it's that every time Western nations make an accusation, it's actually a confession. And I am confident that history will eventually vindicate Gaddafi as the good man and the good leader that he was. And I know that his dream of Pan-Africanism will eventually come to fruition. Anyway, something to think about.